The widowed cowboy's baby was crying when an Apache woman knocked and said, "I have milk." The wind howled across the empty plains of New Hope, a young and rugged planet still in the early years of human colonization. Dust and small rocks skittered across the surface, hitting the metal walls of a small, lonely outpost. Inside, a single light flickered, casting long shadows over the cluttered room. The outpost belonged to Ethan Carson, a widowed cowboy who had left Earth behind in search of opportunity, only to find solitude. Ethan sat in a worn wooden chair, his broad hands resting on his knees. He watched his daughter, Leela, in a small crib beside the window. The baby's cries filled the room, high-pitched and insistent, cutting through the low hum of the outpost's life support systems. Ethan had never been so aware of silence and loneliness until now. His wife, Margaret, had died 6 months earlier, leaving him with a baby too young to understand the danger and hardship of their new home. He rocked back and forth, his boots scraping against the metal floor. "SHH, SHH, I know, Leela," he murmured, trying to calm her. "I'm here. It's all right." But no matter what he did, the baby's cries didn't stop. The outpost was poorly insulated against the frequent storms, and the wind rattled the thin metal walls as if testing Ethan's patience. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. He had been prepared to fight wildlife, harsh storms, and the endless work of maintaining an isolated settlement. He had not been prepared to face sleepless nights, to hold a baby who depended entirely on him, and to feel so utterly alone. The food supply was running low, the water purifier was showing signs of trouble, and the nearest settlement was days away. He tried feeding Leela with what little he had, powdered milk mixed with water, but she refused it. Her tiny fists batted the bottle away, and she screamed even louder. Ethan sighed. "I'm no good at this," he admitted to himself, though his voice carried no pride. The truth was simple. He was struggling to survive, and now he was failing to care for the one thing that mattered most to him. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the jagged landscape. A low rumble of thunder followed, shaking the walls and making the crib tremble slightly. Ethan jumped up, grabbing the crib to steady it. Leela looked up at him, her eyes wide, tears streaking down her small cheeks. "I've got to do something," Ethan muttered. He ran his hand through his hair, frustration and fear battling within him. There were no neighbors, no friends, and no one to call for help. He was on his own. Then, as if answering an unspoken prayer, there came a sound, a knock at the metal door. It was soft, deliberate, and distinct against the roar of the storm. Ethan froze, his heart skipping a beat. Who could be out there in this weather? Visitors were rare on New Hope. Most people kept to themselves, either in outposts like his or traveling between settlements with strict schedules. He grabbed his coat and opened the door cautiously. Standing there was a woman, tall and calm, her dark hair streaked with silver strands that caught the light from his flickering lamp. Her skin was warm brown, and her eyes held a quiet strength that made Ethan feel a strange sense of relief. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice steady despite the wind. "My name is Ahioka. I know it's late and the storm is bad. I have milk for your baby." Ethan blinked. The words seemed simple, almost ordinary, but in that moment they were like a miracle. Milk. Something he had been desperately unable to provide. He hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. "Come in," he said softly, his voice rough from disuse. "Quick, before the storm gets worse." Ahioka entered, carrying a small container with a calm and steady hand. She moved like someone who had spent her life surviving harsh lands, who knew danger and hardship yet remained composed. She approached Leela's crib and smiled gently. "She's crying because she's hungry," Ahioka said. "It's all right. We'll fix that." Ethan watched, fascinated. Ahioka knelt beside the crib and poured the milk into a small bottle. Leela's cries began to soften as Ahioka held the bottle to her lips. The baby took it eagerly, and Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice almost a whisper. I didn't know what else to do." Ahioka smiled, her expression warm but calm. "You're doing your best. That's all anyone can do out here. These storms, this planet, it doesn't make it easy, but people survive. Humans survive." Her words struck something deep in Ethan. Humans survive. He had believed that before, but now, with Leela's tiny fingers wrapped around the bottle, he felt the truth in her words. Survival wasn't just about getting through storms or finding food. It was about caring, helping, and trusting others, even strangers. As Leela drank, Ethan showed Ahioka around the outpost. She noticed the damaged walls, the flickering lights, and the failing water purifier. "You need help," she said simply. "I can help you fix this. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Ethan scratched his beard. He wanted to trust her, but trust was something earned on new hope. "Why would you help me?" he asked. "Because it's what humans do," Ahioka said with a small smile. "We look out for each other, even strangers." The words lingered in the small outpost, heavy with truth. Ethan felt hope stirring in him, a feeling he hadn't felt in months. Maybe he didn't have to face this alone after all. The storm outside raged on, but inside the room felt warmer. Leela's cries had ended, replaced by the soft suckling and the occasional gurgle of contentment. Ethan sat beside Ahioka, watching his daughter, and allowed himself a small smile. "Tell me about yourself," he said, breaking the quiet. "How did you end up out here?" Ahioka leaned back against the wall, her eyes reflecting the flickering light. "I came here to help people settle on this planet, to teach, to repair, to survive. But it's not just work, it's a way of life. You learn to care even when it's hard, even when the planet tries to break you." Ethan nodded slowly. He realized that survival wasn't just about the body. It was about the heart, about hope, about connection. As the storm continued, the two of them sat in the small outpost, sharing quiet conversation and planning small fixes for the next day. Ethan felt a sense of purpose returning to him, something he hadn't realized he'd lost. For the first time since Margaret's death, he didn't feel completely alone. Night fell deeper, and the wind howled louder, but inside there was a small flicker of peace. Leela slept in Ahioka's arms, safe and fed. Ethan stared out the window at the harsh, unforgiving plains, thinking about the long road ahead. But for now he had food, shelter, and someone who cared. That was enough. "Tomorrow," Ethan whispered almost to himself, "we start fixing everything, together." And in that lonely outpost on the edge of new hope, hope began to bloom. The morning light spilled over the jagged horizon of new hope, casting long shadows across the barren plains. The storm from the previous night had passed, leaving a thin mist that clung to the rocky terrain. Inside the small outpost, Ethan Carson stirred from a restless sleep. Leela was already awake, cooing softly in her crib. But she was calm now, her tiny face peaceful. The first rays of sunlight reflected in her wide eyes, and Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in months. Ahioka was already awake, sitting at the small table with a cup of steaming liquid in her hands. She smiled at Ethan, who rubbed the sleep from his eyes and stretched. "Morning," he said, his voice rough but lighter than it had been the day before. "She slept well." "She did," Ahioka replied. "You're learning." She winked, and Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Breakfast was simple: some preserved fruits, a small portion of bread, and a little of the milk Ahioka had brought. But the meal was warm, not just from food, but from the shared comfort of human company. Ethan realized how much he had missed simple conversation, how much the silence of the outpost had weighed on him. After breakfast, Ahioka stood and stretched. "We can't waste the day. This outpost needs work, and we need to make sure it can withstand the next storm." Ethan nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that. I don't know much about repairing things, especially this planet's equipment, but I can follow orders." "That's all anyone can do," Ahioka said. She moved around the room efficiently, checking the water purifier, inspecting the generator, and making notes on a small data pad. New Hope is harsh. It will test us every day. But humans are stronger than the storms if they work together. Ethan watched her with a mixture of admiration and caution. There was something about her, calm, confident, unafraid. He had spent months alone, thinking survival was only about endurance. But Ahioka made him see that survival was also about intelligence, planning, and cooperation. The first task was simple but essential: repairing the water purifier. Ethan had tried before, but the harsh climate and lack of proper tools had left it damaged. Ahioka explained the process step by step, showing him how to clean filters, seal connections, and monitor the pressure levels. "See," she said, smiling as water flowed cleanly from the purifier for the first time in weeks. "It's not magic, it's human skill. We adapt, we fix, we survive." Ethan felt pride swell inside him. "We?" he asked, and she nodded. "Yes, we. Humans don't survive alone." Next, they turned their attention to the outpost's walls. The storm had left scratches and dents in the metal plating. Ahioka showed Ethan how to reinforce the weaker sections using spare materials and sealing compounds. At first, Ethan fumbled, struggling to measure and cut precisely. But Ahioka's calm guidance helped him improve with every movement. As they worked, they talked. Ahioka shared stories of her childhood on Earth, growing up learning the skills of her ancestors and training in modern survival techniques. Ethan listened, fascinated. Her knowledge of both the old ways and the new technology reminded him of how adaptable humans were. "I never thought anyone could teach me so much," Ethan admitted as he hammered a metal plate into place. "I thought survival was just being tough, but it's more than that. It's thinking, planning, helping each other." "That's humanity," Ahioka said, "brains and heart together. That's why humans survive everywhere they go, even on planets like this." By midday, the outpost looked noticeably stronger. The walls were reinforced, the water purifier ran smoothly, and even Leela's crib had been repositioned to a safer spot away from the window. Ethan felt hope stirring within him, a feeling he had thought he'd lost forever. Ahioka paused and wiped sweat from her brow. "We're making progress, but the real test will come soon. New Hope isn't kind to the unprepared." Ethan frowned. "You mean another storm?" "Storms, meteor showers, equipment failures. You never know. But that's the point. Humans survive not because they avoid danger, but because they respond to it. And right now, we're preparing to respond." As the afternoon sun climbed higher, they worked together to plant a small energy crop outside the outpost. These plants absorbed sunlight and converted it into usable energy, helping to power the outpost. Ethan marveled at how resilient the plants were, growing quickly even in harsh conditions. He realized that humans had brought life to this barren planet, shaping it with technology, knowledge, and determination. "This is amazing," Ethan said, looking at the tiny green plants swaying gently in the breeze. "We're making this place livable." "Yes," Ahioka replied. "Humans always make their homes wherever they go. We adapt, we build, we survive." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ethan and Ahioka sat outside the outpost, watching Leela play on a small blanket. The baby reached out to grab the fading sunlight, her laughter pure and unguarded. Ethan felt a warmth in his heart he hadn't felt since Margaret had been alive. "You know," he said quietly, "I never thought I'd survive this long on my own, and now I don't feel so alone." Ahioka smiled. "That's what humans do, we survive. And sometimes we find others to help us survive better." The moment was calm, almost peaceful, but Ethan knew the peace was fragile. New Hope was unpredictable. A sudden meteor shower or another storm could undo all their work in hours. He glanced at Ahioka, realizing that survival wasn't just about physical strength or intelligence. It was about trust, teamwork, and shared purpose. And for the first time in months, he trusted someone completely. Night fell, and the outpost glowed softly in the dark. Ethan checked Leela, making sure she was comfortable and warm. Ahioka monitored the equipment, ensuring everything would function through the night. The storm had passed, but the lessons remained. Humans survive because they adapt, because they cooperate, and because they care. Tomorrow, Ethan said, looking out at the alien horizon, we continue. We make this outpost stronger, we make it home. Ahioka nodded. And we'll do it together. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a flicker of excitement. Not fear, not worry, excitement. He realized that humans didn't just endure life, they shaped it. They conquered challenges, learned from failures, and helped each other. That was what made them strong. That was what made humans exceptional. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Ethan felt a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just a widowed cowboy on a distant planet anymore. He was part of something larger, the story of humanity, resilient and unyielding. And with Ahioka by his side, he knew they could face anything New Hope threw at them. The night passed quietly, the outpost safe, and Leela slept soundly. Ethan sat by the window, thinking of the long days ahead. He knew challenges would come, storms would rage, and danger would strike. But he also knew one truth that had never been clearer. Humans survive because they refuse to give up, because they work together, because they care. And in that small, lonely outpost on the edge of New Hope, humanity was alive, thriving, and ready to face the future. The sun rose over New Hope, painting the rocky plains in shades of gold and amber. Ethan Carson had spent a restless night awake, listening to the quiet hum of the outpost systems. Though the storm from the previous night had passed, he knew the planet's dangers were far from over. Every morning here was a test, and every night a reminder that survival was never guaranteed. Leela stirred in her crib, blinking sleepily. Ethan lifted her gently into his arms, feeling the warmth of her small body. She cooed softly, stretching her tiny fingers toward his face. He smiled, a rare, unburdened smile. "Morning, little one," he whispered. "Looks like we have another day ahead." Ahioka was already awake, inspecting the solar panels on the outpost roof. The sun hit them at the perfect angle, and the panels glimmered as they absorbed energy. "We have enough power for now," she called down, "but we need to stay ahead. This planet will test us again soon." Ethan nodded, setting Leela down safely on the blanket they had made for her. "I'll help you with the panels. Let's make sure nothing breaks before the next storm hits." The day began with steady work. Ethan climbed onto the roof with Ahioka, tightening bolts, checking connections, and clearing dust from the panels. The wind gusted sharply, pushing against them as if New Hope itself wanted to knock them down. Ethan held onto the metal railing, feeling the tension in every muscle. He had grown stronger through his days alone, but now he understood the value of teamwork. "You're getting better," Ahioka said, her voice calm despite the wind. "Humans improve quickly when they focus. That's one reason we survive." Ethan smiled, adjusting a panel. "I never thought I'd learn so fast, or that I'd need to. But I guess life on New Hope doesn't leave you much choice." By mid-morning, the panels were secure, and Ethan helped Ahioka monitor the outpost's energy systems. The small terminal blinked with data, showing levels stable and safe. But Ahioka's expression remained serious. "Energy is just one part," she said. "Food, water, shelter, each must work perfectly. One failure and we could be in serious trouble." Ethan felt a pang of anxiety. He had been surviving by instinct alone before, but Ahioka had shown him that true survival required preparation, knowledge, and attention to detail. "Don't worry," Ahioka added, noticing his unease. "We'll be fine, but there is something I need to check outside." "You stay with Leela for now," Ethan nodded. "Be careful." Ahioka stepped out into the plains, her movements precise and measured. Ethan watched through the reinforced windows, heart pounding as he imagined the dangers lurking just beyond the outpost. New Hope was beautiful, but it was wild, untamed and sometimes deadly. Hours passed. Ethan kept Leela entertained with simple games, making her giggle with peekaboo and silly faces. Her laughter was a balm to his mind, soothing the anxiety that had been building since the early morning. He realized how much strength he drew from her presence. Humans didn't just survive, they found hope and meaning in the lives they protected. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed across the plains. Ethan froze, listening. It wasn't thunder, the storm had passed. It was different, deeper, heavier, like the ground itself was alive. Ahioka's voice came over the comlink. "Ethan, come outside, now." He grabbed Leela, securing her in a sling, and rushed outside. The sight that greeted him made his breath catch. A cluster of meteors streaked across the sky, flaming bright and heading toward the plains near the outpost. Dust and small rocks were thrown into the air as they landed, shaking the ground with each impact. "We need to secure the outpost," Ahioka shouted, running toward the reinforced doors. Ethan followed, holding Leela tightly. "Move the baby to the safe room. I'll handle the exterior." Inside the reinforced safe room, Ethan laid Leela down on a padded mat. She looked at him with wide, curious eyes, unaware of the danger outside. "Don't worry, little one," he murmured. "We're going to be okay." Outside, Ahioka worked quickly, checking the outer walls and reinforcing weak points as small meteor fragments hit the ground around her. Ethan peeked through the small window and felt awe and fear at the same time. Ahioka moved with purpose, calm under pressure, and Ethan realized the strength humans had when courage and intelligence combined. "Ethan, help me with the south wall," she called, gesturing toward a weakened section. He stepped outside, feeling the heat from nearby fragments, and joined her. Together, they hammered metal, sealed cracks, and reinforced the walls. Sparks flew from their tools, mingling with the glowing trails of meteors. The wind carried dust and debris, stinging their skin, but they pressed on, united in their task. "Humans survive," Ahioka shouted over the noise, "because we act, not because we wait." Ethan nodded, pounding a metal brace into place. "We survive because we protect each other." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, but finally the meteor shower passed. The outpost, battered but intact, stood firm against New Hope's wrath. Ethan and Ahioka leaned against the walls, breathing heavily, their bodies sore but alive. Inside, Leela cooed happily, completely oblivious to the chaos. Ethan picked her up, holding her close. "She's fine," he said, relief washing over him. "We did it." Ahioka smiled, brushing dust from her hair. "Yes, but remember, this is only the beginning. New Hope is full of challenges. Every day, every hour, there will be tests." Ethan looked at her, seeing not just a companion but a symbol of human resilience. She had faced the storm with him, worked beside him, and saved not only his outpost but also his hope for the future. As the night settled over New Hope, the outpost glowed softly against the dark plains. Ethan and Ahioka sat together outside, watching the stars appear one by one. Leela slept peacefully in Ethan's arms, a small bundle of life in the middle of a vast, alien world. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I thought I could survive alone. I thought I had to. But now I see humans survive because we trust each other, because we help each other, because we act together." Ahioka nodded. "Exactly, and that's what makes us strong, not strength alone. Not skill alone, but the combination of all our qualities, and when we act together, we can face anything." Ethan realized how much he had changed in just a few days. He had gone from a lonely, struggling widower to a man who understood the power of cooperation, courage, and human ingenuity. He looked at Ahioka, feeling gratitude and respect. Humans were truly remarkable, and together there was almost nothing they couldn't overcome. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the faint scent of alien flora and distant rocks. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, feeling the rhythm of the outpost, the heartbeat of his little family, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Leela stirred slightly and he smiled, knowing that each day would bring new challenges but also new opportunities to grow stronger together. Tomorrow, Ethan said, his voice steady, we continue building. We prepare for the next storm. We survive. And we thrive. Ahioka nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. And we do it as humans, together. In that small outpost on New Hope, surrounded by alien planes and endless skies, the truth was clear. Humanity could endure, adapt, and triumph. And as long as they trusted, helped, and acted together, nothing could break them. Not storms, not meteors, not even loneliness. For Ethan, Layla, and Ahioka, the battle for survival had only just begun. But they were ready. And the story of human courage and ingenuity continued, shining brightly against the vast darkness of the alien world. The morning sun rose slowly over the jagged plains of New Hope, casting long, golden shadows across Ethan Carson's outpost. The previous meteor shower had tested their resolve, but it had also strengthened it. Walls were reinforced, energy systems stabilized, and the outpost had become more than a shelter. It was a small fortress, a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. Ethan stretched, lifting Leela from her crib. The baby yawned, reaching for his face with tiny fingers. He smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. She was safe, fed, and growing stronger every day. He glanced at Ahioka, who was already at the workbench examining schematics for further upgrades. We need to prepare for the next challenge, she said, not looking up. New Hope doesn't rest, and neither should we. Ethan nodded. What kind of challenge? Ahioka turned, her eyes steady. The planet itself. I've been monitoring seismic activity, wind patterns, and atmospheric pressure. There's a high chance of a plasma storm this week. It's rare, but when it happens, it can damage the outpost systems, knock out energy, and even start fires if we're not ready. Ethan felt a tight knot in his stomach. He had faced meteor showers and fierce winds, but a plasma storm sounded different, dangerous in ways he couldn't control. Yet, looking at Ahioka's calm expression, he knew panic wouldn't help. Humans survive not through fear, but through action. We'll prepare, he said firmly. We'll be ready, Ahioka smiled slightly. That's the spirit. They spent the morning reinforcing the roof and walls with extra metal plates, securing energy lines, and checking water and food storage. Leela watched from a safe corner, her small hands clapping in delight at the sounds of tools and machinery. She was learning the rhythm of life on New Hope, unknowingly absorbing lessons of human resilience and adaptability. By afternoon, the outpost was fortified, but the storm was approaching faster than predicted. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, glowing with strange, flickering lights. Ethan and Ahioka could feel the air charged with electricity, even at this distance. The wind picked up, carrying dust and small rocks across the plains, signaling that the planet was preparing to test them once again. Time to move to the safe room, Ahioka said, scooping Leela into her arms. Ethan followed, ensuring all systems were set to automatic and that the doors were sealed. The small room was tight, but it was designed to withstand the worst New Hope could throw at them. The first strike came suddenly. A streak of green light split the sky, followed by a loud crack that shook the outpost. Sparks flew along the energy conduits as the plasma storm's energy arc struck nearby, and the walls hummed under the strain. Ethan gritted his teeth, holding the side of the safe room as Leela whimpered in Ahioka's arms. "We can handle this," Ahioka shouted over the roar. "We've prepared for it. Just stay calm." Ethan nodded. He realized that calmness was as much a weapon as any tool. Panic would only make things worse. Together, they monitored the energy flows and reinforced the internal systems as best as they could. Sparks arced across the walls and alarms blared intermittently, but the outpost held. Minutes felt like hours. Each pulse of the storm shook the ground and rattled the walls. Ethan could see dust and debris swirling outside, carried by violent winds. He imagined the planes ablaze with plasma strikes, each one capable of flattening the fragile structures scattered across New Hope. And yet, inside the small safe room, he felt a quiet pride. Humans had built this outpost. Humans could survive this storm. Leela's cries grew louder as a particularly bright bolt struck nearby, lighting up the room in greenish light. Ethan lifted her higher, soothing her with soft words and gentle rocking. "It's all right, little one. We're okay. We survive, remember." Ahioka worked quickly, rerouting power lines and stabilizing energy nodes. "Keep her calm," she shouted. "If she panics, it'll make the situation harder." Ethan focused all his attention on Leela, singing softly in a voice that he hadn't used in months. The baby's whimpers softened into small coos, her tiny hands clutching his jacket. Watching her calm, Ethan felt a surge of hope. Humanity survived because it cared, because it acted, because it refused to give up. Hours passed, each one testing their endurance and patience. The plasma storm showed no sign of stopping. Lightning-like arcs struck the outpost, sending vibrations through the walls. Dust and debris filled the air and the ground trembled beneath them. Ethan's arms ached from holding Leela, and Ahioka's hands were sore from constant adjustments, but neither of them stopped. Finally, the storm began to fade. The green arcs lessened, the wind softened, and the distant plains glowed under the settling light of dusk. Ethan set Leela down carefully on the blanket, exhausted but relieved. She crawled toward him, giggling softly as if celebrating their survival. "We did it," Ethan said, almost in disbelief. "We survived." Ahioka nodded, wiping sweat and dust from her face. "Yes, but remember, survival here is not just about strength. It's about preparation, skill, and working together. Humans survive because we combine all of these. Alone, we might fail. Together, we succeed." Ethan felt the weight of her words. He had faced fear and danger before, but now he understood fully. Human survival was not just about endurance. It was about ingenuity, courage, and compassion. And he had both found and contributed to it in this small outpost. As the night settled over New Hope, Ethan and Ahioka stepped outside cautiously. The plains were scorched in some areas, but the outpost stood firm, a testament to their work and human resilience. The sky, once dark and menacing, now sparkled with stars, distant suns shining across alien landscapes. Ethan picked up Leela, holding her close as she slept peacefully. "Look at that," he whispered. "We made it through, together." Ahioka smiled, standing beside him. "And we will keep making it. Every challenge, every storm, humans endure, adapt, and thrive. That's what makes us strong." Ethan looked out at the horizon, imagining the days ahead. More storms, more dangers, more tests, but he no longer felt fear. He felt determination, hope, and pride. He realized that survival was not just living, it was building, improving, and protecting what mattered. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we start rebuilding and improving. We learn from this storm. We make the outpost even stronger. And we continue together." Ahioka placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, that's the way of humans. That's the way of life on New Hope. Challenges will come, but humans will always rise. Always." The wind carried the faint smell of scorched rock and alien flora, but it also carried something else: hope. A promise that humanity, even on the edge of a new world, could survive, thrive, and shine. Ethan held Leela close, looking at Ahioka, and felt a bond that went beyond survival. They were a small family, united by circumstance, courage, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the night deepened and the stars shimmered above, Ethan realized something profound. New Hope was harsh, unpredictable, and dangerous, but humans were stronger. Stronger than storms, stronger than fear, stronger than solitude. And as long as they worked together, trusted each other, and cared for the ones they loved, nothing could break them. In the quiet after the storm, with Leela sleeping peacefully and the outpost standing tall, Ethan felt a sense of purpose like never before. He wasn't just surviving. He was building a life, teaching his daughter, learning from Ahioka and shaping the future. The trials of New Hope were far from over, but they were ready, together. And in that small outpost on the edge of an alien world, humanity's strength shone brighter than any storm, stronger than any challenge, and more enduring than any fear. The morning dawned calm over the plains of New Hope. After the plasma storm, the world seemed quieter, almost peaceful. Ethan Carson stood at the outpost's edge, Leela in his arms, and watched the sun rise over jagged rocks and distant plateaus. The storm had tested them, but it had also taught them the value of preparation, teamwork, and trust. Ahioka emerged from the outpost, her hands wiping dirt and soot from the day before's battle. She smiled at Ethan and Leela, a small gesture full of reassurance. "The storm is over," she said. "Now we rebuild, strengthen, and prepare for what comes next." Ethan nodded. He had learned through fire, wind, and lightning that survival on New Hope required not just courage, but planning, knowledge, and a willingness to help others. And he had also learned something just as important. Humans thrived because they worked together. Alone, they could struggle, but together, they could achieve almost anything. They began the day with repairs and upgrades. The plasma storm had left small damage to the outpost's energy grids, and some walls had dents and scratches. Ethan and Ahioka worked side by side, lifting panels, tightening bolts, and inspecting every system with care. Leela watched from her blanket, fascinated by the constant motion and sounds, her tiny hands clapping in delight at each spark of light or clatter of tools. "This place is becoming a proper home," Ethan said, adjusting a metal brace on the roof. "I never imagined it could look like this, even after everything," Ahioka smiled. "A home is more than walls and roofs. It's safety, preparation, and community. Humans make it through because we build, protect, and care. This outpost is proof." By midday, the energy systems were restored and improved. The solar panels worked more efficiently than ever, and the small energy crops outside had begun producing enough to power the outpost comfortably. Ethan marveled at the sight, realizing how far they had come in just a few days. Humans could adapt, learn, and thrive, even on the edge of a new world. But survival on New Hope was never about comfort. Afternoon brought new challenges. A distant tremor shook the plains, and Ethan noticed small cracks forming in the rocky ground nearby. Ahioka checked her instruments. "We might have a minor quake," she said. "Nothing dangerous yet, but we need to monitor it. New Hope is unpredictable. Humans survive because we stay vigilant." Ethan nodded, appreciating her calm logic. Together, they checked the outpost's foundations, reinforcing weak spots and ensuring the building was safe. Each action, each decision, was a lesson in human ingenuity and persistence. They were learning to read the land, understand its dangers, and respond with intelligence and courage. As the day went on, the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant reds and purples. Ethan held Leela close, watching her tiny hands reach for the colors in awe. "You're going to grow up here," he whispered, "and you'll learn what humans can do." Ahioka approached, carrying small containers of harvested water and food supplies. "She's already learning," she said softly, "by watching, listening, and feeling safe. That's how humans thrive, through care and protection. And now she has both." Evening came, and with it, the quiet hum of a world that had survived another day. Ethan and Ahioka shared a small meal, discussing plans for the coming weeks. They would expand the outpost, plant more energy crops, and establish a small garden to ensure long-term sustainability. Each idea reflected the human ability to adapt, innovate, and cooperate. "You know," Ethan said, leaning back and gazing at the alien horizon, "I thought I would always be alone. I thought survival meant just keeping breathing, but it's more. It's building, caring, teaching, and trusting others." Ahioka nodded. "Humans survive because we are more than individuals. We are communities, families, and networks of support. That's what makes us strong. That's what will keep us alive on this planet. Night fell, and the stars shimmered above New Hope. The outpost glowed softly, a beacon of human perseverance in the midst of wild, untamed plains. Ethan held Leela, watching her sleep peacefully, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She was safe, alive, and thriving, not just surviving but growing. And he knew it was because of the strength, courage, and compassion of humanity. Suddenly, a faint sound reached their ears, the distant hum of machinery, faint and steady, carried on the wind. Ethan and Ahioka exchanged a glance. Another outpost, another group of settlers. It didn't matter. Humans were everywhere on New Hope, scattered but connected by purpose and determination. They were not alone, and that made all the difference. Ethan set Leela down in her crib for the night, watching as she curled up, exhausted but happy. He turned to Ahioka. "We've done more than survive. We've built, protected, and prepared. This outpost is more than just a shelter, it's proof of human strength." Ahioka smiled. "Yes, and tomorrow we continue. We expand, improve, and teach. That's how humans thrive. That's how we leave a mark, even on a distant planet." The two of them stepped outside, feeling the cool night air on their faces. The plains stretched endlessly before them, dark and mysterious, yet full of promise. Ethan realized that humanity's power was not just in technology or strength. It was in courage, intelligence, compassion, and the refusal to give up. "We survived storms, meteors, plasma, and quakes," Ethan said softly, almost to himself. "And we're still standing." "Humans are incredible," Ahioka nodded. "We are, and together we can face anything." As the night deepened, the outpost remained safe, glowing softly like a promise to the stars. Leela slept peacefully, dreaming of a world filled with warmth, care, and adventure. Ethan and Ahioka prepared for the days ahead, knowing challenges would continue, but confident in their ability to face them. In that quiet moment on a distant planet, Ethan understood something profound. Humanity was more than survival. It was resilience, creativity, love, and hope. And as long as they held on to these values, humans could thrive anywhere, even in the harshest worlds. The first light of dawn brought a new day, and with it, new opportunities. Ethan, Ahioka, and Leela faced the horizon together, ready to continue building their life, strengthening their outpost, and proving the enduring power of human ingenuity. And as the alien sun rose over New Hope, the outpost stood as a testament to the human spirit, strong, resilient, and unwavering. No storm, no danger, and no solitude could break it. Humans survived, adapted, and thrived, and this small family was living proof of that eternal truth. Together, they faced the future, unafraid and united, ready to carve a life from the wild, untamed planet. Because that was what humans did. They endured, they created, they survived, and above all they thrived.